Consider the lilies, how they grow. They toil not, they spin not. And yet I say unto you that Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. If then God so clothed the grass, which is today in the field and tomorrow is cast into the oven, know ye of little. And seek not ye what ye shall eat or what ye shall drink, neither be ye of doubtful mind.
This is our kingdom, a kingdom of righteousness. Praise the Lord. Praise ye the Lord.
For all these things do the nations of the world seek after, and your Father knoweth that ye have need of these things. But rather seek ye the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell that ye have, and give alms. Provide yourselves bags which wax not old, a treasure in the heavens that faileth not, where no thief approacheth, neither moth corrupteth. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. To the kingdom of Israel!
Yahweh Hashem, Yahweh, Yahweh Hashem, Yahweh, Yahweh Hashem, Yahweh, Yahweh Hashem, Yahweh.
The election, an aristocracy, meaning rule of the best, a group of considered superior to others, a government by the best men in the state, a governing body composed of the best men in the state, and that's the elect. We're about to have it all right? Psalms 37 and verse 11, and it reads, "But the meek shall inherit the earth, and shall delight themselves in the abundance of peace." That word for peace in the Hebrew is shalom, which goes into safety, soundness in body, meaning we're going to truly have rest, welfare, health, prosperity, peace, quiet, tranquility, contentment. So we're going to fully enjoy the planet Earth. We're going to rule and exist within the Lord's creation as we were created to do. I'm ready to rule the world, man. How about you?
Let the golden light of this sunset guide our hearts in peace.
Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell that ye have, and give alms. Provide yourselves bags which wax not old, a treasure in the heavens that faileth not, where no thief approacheth, neither moth corrupteth. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.
The ocean spirit dances today to abundance and joy and to eternal peace.
See, this is what we're hoping for. This is part of our hope. Not only that we are members of the elect with fruits meet for repentance, like John the Baptist said, but from our low estate, because we've been brought low, even though we have this knowledge, we have this truth. Remember what it said in Revelation. I know thy works in tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. Why are we rich? Because we're rich in faith. We have this knowledge. So our hope is at our last end, we're going to be increased. Okay? And if you ask me, the greatest riches right now is to be delivered by Yahushua, is to get that new body that the Apostle Paul spoke about in 1 Corinthians 15th chapter, to get that, get that new body where we'll never be sick, we'll be immortals, like it said in 1 Corinthians 15, to be delivered from the coming destruction. and to be a part of Yahweh's cabinet in the next kingdom. Okay, those are the real riches right now. That's what we want to get. Because if you get that, you got everything. I mean, you got everything. Okay, so our sights are set a lot higher than this present world. All right, as it is written, the fashion of this world shall pass away. We are individuals of vision, and the scripture said where an individual lacks vision, he perishes. Okay, so we can see the future. All right, and we hope that we're going to be part of it, beginning with the elect.
All right. Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Makakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers, and peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful elect out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Makakwadash, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashim Shai. All right, and what I want to get into this morning with morning news and prophecy is dealing with what we're seeing, with Iran and the beast, okay, and more news as well, okay, because like we know we're in the time where there's always a lot going on, in every layer, okay, of prophecy, man. Okay, and it's interesting what we're seeing happening, and just kind of get some understanding, of how, the elites have this, this banking network, okay, that all these nations, all right, are entangled in, okay, and how what we're seeing now, dealing with Iran, in the West, is the West, their intention was to do a regime change in Iran. Okay, and their intent was to put Iran resources, okay, on the global market through Western banking systems. You see, but it was a what you call a hiccup in the system. You see, because they didn't expect Iran, to have that type of resistance. They had pieces in place. They had people, embedded within Iran, within the ranks of Iran, ready to, take charge and be the puppet government for the West. Because in the early stages of the war, Iran snuffed out a few agents of Mossad, that had been flipped. You see, a few Iranian officials that had been flipped, with Western intelligence. You see, which their plan was to, do a regime change, set up a puppet government, and have full control over Iranian assets, okay, going into this new world order. You see, so they was going to take it by force. All right, so since, they wasn't able to take it by force, now what we're seeing is them wanting to cut a deal with Iran. Now, in the midst of this, it's still treachery, okay? We have to understand, because this war, all right, is going to be these nations, all right, double crossing one another, triple crossing one another, all right? But we know other things have to happen before then. So what we're seeing with Iran and the West is now they're making deals, okay, to reintegrate Iran into, all right, the system, okay, because Iran has been on the outskirts, Iran and North Korea, these two nations have been on the outskirts of the global economy, okay. So now what we're seeing with, these Western, elites, okay, is an attempt to integrate Iran into the system by deals. You know, they tried it militarily, okay, which it's been working thus far. All right, because remember, that was fresh off a campaign in Venezuela. You see, because America now, Venezuelan oil has to pass through American banks because the little chick that's the president of Venezuela now, well, she's a puppet for the West. You know, she played a part in giving up, you know, Maduro. That's why it was so easy for them to come in, because a lot of people in Venezuela, they sold out. Okay. And they pretty much offered Maduro on a silver platter, okay, to America, man. You see? So they went and got Maduro and they put that Venezuela oil, okay, on the market, okay, pegged to what? These American banks. So now, you know, they went and tried that with Iran, but it didn't work like that. Why? Because of prophecy. Okay. So what we're seeing now is these devils trying to cut a deal, okay, to integrate Iran into this system, all right, so they can move forward with their agenda. You see? And when you go into the scriptures, let's go here. Let's get some scriptures. Then we got videos, some few things I was looking up. Okay, try to tie all these things together. Okay, but it's interesting what's happening though. You know, like I say, now they pivoted to trying to reintegrate Iran into this global economy. Okay, and the whore is trying to cut a deal, all right, with the with the wild boar. All right, and we know that all these deals that these nations got, they're going to go sour. Okay, and they're going to go into full-blown war. You see, but we're just watching these things play out. Okay, step by step. Now, this is Revelation 18:1. It says, and after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened, okay, with his glory. You know, so John is seeing, you know, this angel, on this chariot. You know, he's seeing this big chariot light up in, you know, the sky. Okay, and the voice is going to come. Okay, from this chariot, it says Revelation 18:2, and he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of the devil, and the hole of every foul spirit, and the cage of every unclean and hateful bird. So we know, all right, at the end of these deals and these things that we see happening in so-called peace, and you know, these banking deals and the digital system and these different agreements and deals that these nations got, well, we know it's all going to go sour, and America's going to be a desert, and Yahushua is going to come destroy all the heathen militaries of the earth. Okay, that's how it ends. Okay, so we're seeing, you know, the soap opera, all right, the drama that these nations are having. Okay, certain deals being made, all right, certain treachery, you know, is being put in place. Okay, but we know how it ends with America becoming a desert, all right, the elites going into slavery. Okay, verse 18 said, for all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. Okay, and to be able to participate in the global market, okay, you got to take down, all right, the wine of Babylon, and the main ingredient of this wine is this technocracy, man. Okay, which is complete rebellion. Because see, this technocracy is Satanism. Okay, it's nothing but idolatry, man. All right, Baal worship. You see, this technocracy is founded on complete satanic, all right, Baal worship, all right, tendencies, man. You see, complete rebellion. So to make any deals, all right, with the West, okay, is you're now part of, all right, this rebellion. And all these nations are guilty, some more than others, but all of them are guilty, man. Okay, all these nations are in bed with the whore, some more than others, and we're going to get into that. Okay, it says, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, all the leaders of these different nations, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies, man. Because we have to understand all these nations have long-term ambition, okay, and they're positioning themselves, all right, for this transition. Okay, so what we're seeing now is sweet deals being, all right, because we know Esau, okay, he come with these deals, but we know what's in his heart, war. Okay, and it says, let's go here, but America has been in the driver's seat, okay, and we speak about America, we're talking about the elite system that's set up in America, this economic system. If they set up in the West, you know, they've been able to enrich certain governments. Okay, now the people, all right, they suffer, the masses, because the whole technocracy is about, you know, the elites of every nation prospering, okay, and the masses suffering with the bankers at the top still in the position as overlords over all these different nations. Okay, so America, you know, the elites have used America to impoverish nations, okay, and enrich nations, okay, or to impoverish, to enrich governments, but still impoverish the masses, okay, because the elites are all about the government selling out to them, okay, and giving the masses over to them, because when these IMF, all right, banks come in, where they give a government a huge loan with crazy interest, okay, and what's collateral for these IMF loans? The people. So when they go to Argentina and give Argentina this big loan, okay, only the higher ups benefit from their loan. The people, you know, you'll get new infrastructure, okay, you'll get certain, you know, little perks, general perks, but ultimately it's the higher ups that benefit. And now the labor, okay, of their government belongs to the elites, because what's paying these loans back? The taxes. Well, how do people get taxed? Through their labor. Okay, so when you go to, matter of fact, let's get there real quick in book of Nahum. It's the book of Nahum, the 3rd chapter. Okay, just the book of Nahum, chapter 3 and verse 4 said, because of the multitude of the whoredoms of the well-favored harlot. Okay, and what is this place well-favored? You know, the American culture, and then the governments of these nations that have sold out. You know, they love these economic packages that America can offer. Okay, because America is able to offer these economic packages into where, because all these governments corrupt. You see, all these governments, some way more corrupt than others, but there's corruption in every government. Okay, even Iran, there's certain, you know, of these officials that are looking to do business with the whore. Okay, and that's why you even have a certain divide amongst, you know, Iran leadership, because you have, when you look at Iran, the way it's set up, you have the president and you got certain officials, okay, that's a part of the president, and they go do the diplomacy. See, the IRGC and the supreme leader, you know, that's really where you get the military. Okay, and that's where you get the final decision making in Iran. The supreme leader outranks the president. Okay, so the president, what you see, this guy Pezeshkian, the Iranian president, you know, he's more in tune with wanting to do deals with the West. Okay, the supreme leader is more like, nigga, we'll go to war and to drop over dime with these niggas. You see, so you have that dynamic going on. All right, but when you go back into it, it said, because of the multitude of the whoredoms of the well-favored harlot, the mistress of witchcraft that selleth nations through her whoredoms and families through her witchcraft. Yeah, because like I said, these IMF banks are able to come and give these extravagant loans to these nations. Okay, which the government, you know, they scheme off the top. You know, they invest a little bit into the country. All right. And the main thing that they have to invest in when they get these loans is digital, all right, infrastructure. Okay. That's part of them selling themselves to the bankers. All right. They get these loans and they have to invest in digital infrastructure, and the loan is paid back through the labor, okay, of the masses, man. Okay. So this is how these elites run through the earth. All right. Heaping, okay, everything into themselves, man. Okay. Because they have this banking system in which they're able to print wealth, okay, through this petrodollar. You see? So they're able to print wealth out of nothing and give these loans to these nations and enslave that population. Okay, and have these certain governments in their pocket because now they're in debt. You see, when you go here to the book of Proverbs, 26, might be 22, so likely. Let's go Proverbs 22. So you go to Proverbs 22. All right, Proverbs 22:7, it said, the rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. And that's the banking doctrine of the elites, is to get people in debt. The more debt that they have on you, the more control that they have over the government. And they control the government, they control the population. Okay? So the elites have been going throughout the world, and they've used this American petrodollar and the American military to enforce debt on the world. Okay, and if you refuse to get down, they come in with the sword. Okay, and they force you to get down. You see, but what we're seeing with Iran, they're not able to force them, okay, to get down. Okay, so now they have to make these enticing deals because Iran wants to be an economic power. Okay, they want to be a power in the earth. You see, they want their nation to thrive in the earth. Okay, so these deals, okay, are going to be enticing. Okay, well, we know one thing, that all this is going to go sour. Okay, so no matter, like I said, no matter what deals they make, we know it's all going to go sour because Esau has to get to a certain point with his new world order. So the Lord's allowing particular things to play out the way that they're playing out for the sake of prophecy, man, because he has to get to the point to where he can mandate this thing. All right, with Revelation 3:10 has to come into play, where the whole world going to be tried with the hour temptation, man, which is the MOTB. Okay, so let's see, because I got a few lookups I want to get into. So let's go here. Let's get this video. Oh, holla at Aunt Cat, oh Catherine. Okay, so let's play this. She's gonna expound on some things. So let's play this, and then we'll go into some information. Kind of give a little more clarity to it. And I pray this is making sense. There's a lot of information, trying to keep it concise, as possible. Let's play this.
It's many things. One is that if you are going to build a global digital control grid, then Iran needs to come into the central banking fold. Iran has a central bank, but it's not integrated into the Western central banking system. So we all know Wesley Clark's 7 countries in 5 years, proposition for war after 9/11, and Iran was always the last one. So it took a lot longer than 5 years, but here we are. If you listen to the president, he said, I want to take the oil. And although I do believe he's focused on the North and South America instead of, now that the Ukraine strategy didn't quite work, where, the U.S. is reconfiguring into a North-South strategy. But there is no doubt because of the importance of oil and the importance of a high oil country that's not in the financial architecture. It's significant to the Western financial architecture as it's being reset, as it's being changed. So I think, one, it's the building in the infrastructure, but two, the oil is critical in terms of geopolitics. So I think it's a combination of both resource war and got the British Empire. But the idea of putting boots on the ground in a ground war in Iran is just, I don't believe it's winnable for the United States. If you look at China's energy strategy, there are many ways China, if China had to work without the Straits of Hormuz, they could, but clearly they're better off having it. Here's the thing, we're talking about the Straits now, but I think there's a real possibility we're going to see bottlenecks in key trade routes. So until now, we have seen warfare through sanctions on the dollar, but now that war is leaving just the financial realm and going into the resource realm, and you're starting to see, more and more pressure for fight over resources. It's going to turn into more conventional warfare, not with conventional weapons. The weapons are getting more and more unconventional. But certainly it's going to be physical warfare in addition to financial warfare.
So you're seeing fighting, because sanctions aren't doing it like they once did, because these nations, certain nations, these nations that, the scriptures speak about is playing a vital part of this third world war. Okay. It's turning America to a desert. Well, these nations, the kings of the East, Ezekiel 38, okay, these nations have systems to sustain themselves outside the dollar. Okay, so as the dollar was losing its grip on certain nations, the West had to get more aggressive, okay, and actually, go into launching a war. Okay, because if they would have got the regime change in Iran, like I say, that would have been a major play for the West, man. It would have been a major play if they could have got their regime change. You see? But it didn't happen because, we say, prophecy. Okay? So now they're pivoting to wanting to make a deal and reintegrate Iran into the economy, all right, into the global economy, okay, to seal up their leakage. Okay? Because with Iran operating outside the dollar, plus their collaboration with Russia, okay, like I said, we're going to go into some, information. Okay, Russia is nowhere near has the debt that America has. Okay, they're part of this IMF banking system. We're going to go into the IMF. Okay, even Iran is a part of the IMF. All right, but they don't utilize the IMF that much. Iran joined the IMF in 1945, and they only used it twice since then. And the last time they tried to use it in 2020 during the pandemic, it got rejected, because of the tension that was going on with America. Okay, so Iran, North Korea, and Russia have been black sheep of, the global economy. They get to participate to a degree, all right, but they don't have the perks and privileges of most of these nations that's under this IMF umbrella. Okay, so it's interesting just to see how the scriptures, the allies that the scriptures speak about, they're pretty much the black sheep of this economy. Okay, of this global economy, and they're able to operate outside of it, which gives them a little more leverage. Okay, to be a little more independent. They still under the umbrella. All right, they're still under this banking system. They still have to go through and deal, okay, with these central bankers, all right, to function as a nation. Okay, they just have a little more leverage, and that's why you see this alliance forming. That's why you see these wars becoming, it went from just sanctions and sanctions and sanctions, and now it's physical war that's being waged. Okay, because Ukraine was supposed to put Russia in debt. Okay, there's Ukraine war. It was supposed to put Russia more in debt. All right, and it was supposed what they wanted Ukraine to do to Russia is what Iran just did to America. All right, about a month ago. All right, which is strategically weaken America to wage war in their region, okay, to set them up for a topple. So they wanted Ukraine to weaken Russia to set them up for easy topple, okay, because they wanted to come in and change, all right, the infrastructure and incorporate Russia even more, okay, and divide Russia up amongst, different oligarchs. It's a lot these devils got going on, okay, but let's play some more.
They pushed Russia out of the financial system, although, sanctions have come off Russian oil during this.
People keep asking, how do we...
So this war has been very good for Iran and very good for Russia. But Russia has built a much more resilient economy since 2014, and that is now working to their benefit. And the other thing they've done is they've never gotten dependent on the Western financial system again. And once they went through the rape of Russia in the 90s, it stripped down the debt, and they've never levered up. So one of the advantages Russia has is it's got plenty of energy and it's not in a debt trap. Now, like China, it's facing a severe demographic problem, so it does have its problems. But I think Russia has managed the situation, anticipating they have to be able to survive, enormous pressure, whether it's coming in from the Ukraine or having to build the kind of hypersonic missile capability and electronic warfare capability that they've built. So, I would say that they've used their dollars in terms of investing in the infrastructure well. Now, to make this transition, they've had to grow much closer to China. And so, the U.S. is
the kings of the East, okay? The kings of the East, man. So the Lord got it to where all these moves that these bankers are making, okay, to set up this new world order is fulfilling prophecy, man. Esau, the Lord has Esau setting his own trap. Okay, the Lord got Esau Edom setting his own trap, okay, with the attempt to try to pull this off, because it's creating alliances, okay, that's going to fulfill prophecy, and it's going to escalate into war. America going to end up sending boots to Iran, so we know this thing, all this is going to go left, okay, but we're just going into, all right, the events that's rolling out real time, okay? But the way Russia was able to, not go into heavy debt and build an economy, that operated outside, okay, of the Western economy, okay, to be able to, all right, bulk up his military because they have a role in prophecy, man. Okay, the elites play their part. Okay, but ultimately the Lord got a part for Russia, which is chief prince, okay, to be a banner for these other nations to rally around. Okay, so the Lord propped up Russia, okay, to be this banner of resistance against the West. Okay, which Russia got new world ambitions as well. All of them do. Okay, but for prophecy's sake, we know that there's a resistance against Babylon that's being formed. Okay, while all this is playing out, you see. So let's play this.
Succeeded in busting the relationship between Germany and Russia, which was, I think, part of the goal of what happened in the Ukraine. But we've managed to very much make them closer to Russia in a way that make both Russia and China stronger. I don't understand the West's strategy. The reason, if you know anything about my history, I left the establishment in 1998. And one of the reasons I left the establishment was I was absolutely convinced that their plan to build and manage a unipolar empire wouldn't work. They were going to fail. And I didn't understand why they were putting together a plan that was clearly going to be a failure. To me.
And it is going to fail. Okay, it's absolutely going to fail. But they're going to be allowed to make certain progress to a point. Okay, but ultimately it is going to fail, and she said she's seen this in 99, it was going to fail. This unipolar, all right, economy, one world economy, one world government, one world religion, okay, under this technocracy and surveillance state. Okay. You see, and she said in 99, she's seen it was going to fail.
this looks like a flop. I have an article called Financial Coup d'etat that I wrote about. I think I published the first version in 2006. I was in the city of London at an investment conference in 2000. It was before 9/11. And John Laughlin was giving a presentation about the privatization that was going on in Eastern Europe and sort of the shenanigans that were going on. And then Ann Williamson, who covered Moscow and what was happening in Russia for the Wall Street Journal and had written a book about it that got suppressed, gave a presentation about the sort of, I'll call it piratisation, but sort of the theft of government resources and the creation of the oligarchs in Russia. And then I was giving a paper about a similar process in housing and real estate in the United States. And it was shocking to us because we're basically, and I had just come off doing research on the disaster capitalism in South America. And what happened was each one gave a different presentation. And what we realized is, oh, it's the same law firms. It's the same investment banks. It's the same big institutional investors. And they are playing this game around the world. The wall comes down and they're playing pirated game in the United States, it's the same people. I'll give you a perfect.
So these bankers, okay, like I say, they put all these governments in debt, okay, with these IMF loans, okay, because they have this system is so hard to function without the petrodollar, okay, and these loans are made in what? Petrodollars, okay, and having these petrodollars loans, it opens you up, okay, to a whole nother market, okay, to where you can sell your resources, okay, on the global market, and you can now buy and import resources on the global market, okay, which that, forge your economy, okay, you're able to bring a little more comfort to, the people, they don't, financially benefit, but they do see the few perks that come with, these certain deals. But what they're doing, they're enslaving themselves to this banking system, man. Okay. And he's going to hit the switch and turn this thing to a digital prison, to a technocracy, man. Okay. So he's putting himself in position to flip that switch, man. These bankers, they're putting themselves in position to get ready to flip this switch. Okay. So let's fast forward a little more. She's gonna talk a little more, and then we're gonna get into some information on Rajasa.
The game, because first you got to see the game. Look at the peace board and the redevelopment plan for Gaza. You had Witkoff and Kushner were on CBS bragging about the plan and the fact that they had it had been prepared and ready to go 2 years ago. It's like, okay, you're saying the redevelopment plan was available and ready before October 7th, 2023, really? And it was funny, Witkoff said that and Kushner looked like he was squirming terribly in his seat. It's pretty funny. So the way I look at the world, because my understanding of the world is based on when I worked in Washington and Wall Street, kind of seeing how things worked. In my experience, you scale up through a committee system and there are real factions and there's real competition over real resources. But at the end of the day, at the top, it's one pot of money and the bankers are always on both sides. That's why the institution of the architecture in Iran or in the Ukraine or Gaza, or, they're trying to do it everywhere in the world. That architecture needs to get embedded everywhere. And that's why everybody are embedding it. And they're all fighting about who's going to control the control grid in their country or their region or their section. But everybody seems to agree with Mr. Global, oh, we're going to implement this control grid. So if you have sovereign nations that have subsections, municipalities and counties, what we've done is rather than directly try and change them, we've layered all these organizations on top, like the WTO or like the World Health Organization, and created sovereign immunity or various kinds of immunity in all these organizations. And what we've been able to do is constantly enforce rules at the bottom because of these organizations, but the folks at the bottom can't do anything because there's no direct line between their governance chain of command and those sort of international organizations. They're too big and too far away. And, part of this has been treaty agreements where we agree to a treaty and then enforce it on the local guys. And in fact, it's really not legal, but the local guys have never been able to stop it or turn it around. the central bankers knew they wanted a bank that was above the law. And the thing I find remarkable is not just that they can't be enforced about, but they can hold money and move money anywhere in the world secretly. So, that kind of secrecy is very, very powerful. There's a wonderful book about the BIS called The Tower of Basel, and they tell stories in the middle of a war, how money's moving back and forth, and the Germans, because in the middle of
Yeah,
war,
so I put the link up there. All right, you can go to it. Okay, like I said, these banks, they exist outside of the laws of these nations. Okay, that's why your boy Maya Amschild Rothschild, okay, pretty much the founder of the Rothschild banking cartel, they say, look, give me control of a nation's money. I care not who make the laws. Okay, because if you control the money, you control the people who make the laws. Okay, so that's why everything, you see all the interests of the bankers, okay, are forwarded globally because everyone's in debt to these niggas, man. You see? So, and in some countries more than other. That's what we're going to get into. So, if a brother could, let's get, I want to get some of this information. All right. Now, Russia has been the boogeyman for a long time. So it's like, okay, what's the deal with Russia? All right. Because we know, okay, their role in prophecy. Okay. And as we go into Russia's relationship now, if a brother can post Proverbs 26 and 27, then also if a brother can post the book of Psalms, chapter 55, Psalms 55 verses 20 and 21. And let's put that in the NLT. Psalms 55, 20, and 21 in the NLT. Bible shot. And Proverbs 26 and 27. So let's go into a little information. Now, when you go into the USSR, so after World War II, the world reserve currency went from the British pound to the American dollar. All right. So you had this council. Okay. You had this council called the Bretton Woods Agreement. So let me see. When you go into Russia, let's see. So I just asked, did the USSR agree to the Bretton Woods Agreement? So this agreement solidified, all right. This is when you get the birth of the IMF. This is where you get, the dollar is the world reserve currency. So after World War II, the nations that were allies, all right, they had it was during World War II, even before the war was over, all right, because you had what you call the Allied powers, okay, they was winning the war, and it was already so as the Allies was winning because they was getting invested in by the bankers, okay, because that's how the elites usually sway wars. They're not generals, they're not out there, with battlefield strategy, okay, but what they do, they'll stop funding one side and keep funding the other side, okay, and that's how they sway a lot of wars throughout history, you see. But what's happening now with this war, all right, you got nations that not as dependent on, okay, these IMF loans, all right, like they once were. They can still wage war, okay, without the bankers. You see, that's what make this war different. You see, so when you go to, it said while the USSR, it said the Soviet Union did not agree to the final Bretton Woods Agreement. It said while the USSR actively participated in the July 1944 conference in New Hampshire and even helped shape certain demands, the ultimate outcome was rejected. Here are the key specifics of the Soviet Union involvement and rejection. It says initial participation. It says Soviet delegates were present at the pre-conference meetings and actively defended their national economic interests during the proceedings. The refusal, although the Soviet Union signed the initial final act, they ultimately rejected. They said they ultimately declined to ratify the treaty. The reasons why: the Soviet charge that the resulting institutions, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, now part of the World Bank, were merely branches of Wall Street. So USSR was like, look, this is nothing but American banking. You know, y'all want us to sign under this charter as if this is a global, you know, mutual bank, but this is nothing but American banking. And that's why America is able to put sanctions on everybody, because they've been in the power seat of the finances, man, the elites. Okay, they use this American system to be the centerpiece of global finance. Okay, and that's why America is able to weaponize the dollar. Okay, because of how vital it is to global trade. You see, so that's why any of these leaders, because you go into Gaddafi was getting ready to put all the leaders of Africa together and combine their resources and come with another currency. They had to go get that nigga, man, because that takes away the leverage that the IMF has over these nations through the petrodollar. Okay, Saddam, all right, he stopped selling his gold, his oil in dollars, and started using other currencies and even gold. Okay, that's why when they found Saddam, it was so much gold, you know, in that palace, you know, because he would start taking gold and other currencies for, all right, the Iraqi oil. Okay, what happened? They had to go get that nigga, man. You see, so the leverage, all right, that the elite's been having this goddamn petrodollar, man. Okay, because he's been able to destroy economies, okay, by shutting them off from the petrodollar. But you have nations that began to thrive outside of it, okay, which is Russia, Iran, are going to play a major part in taking down the whore. You see, it says the Russian Federation, the USSR successor, eventually joined the IMF in 1992. So what happened? The USSR collapsed. You know, they tried to do their own separate economy. It's because they never joined, the USSR formed its own separate economic and trade system from the communist bloc, which it was, you know, it was hard for them to operate without their dollar. You know, it was hard for USSR to try to operate. So eventually it fell, okay, because you had people on the inside sabotaging, all right, as well. But eventually they failed. So in '92 they had to join the IMF. They had to come in. Okay. Now, when you go into it, they're part of the IMF. Now, when you go to it, I asked how much debt does Russia have and what's its current standing with IMF banks. It says the mid-2026 Russia's total national government debt cites at roughly 518 billion. Okay, and that's way lower than America's $40 trillion debt that they have. Okay, and it says represented about 18 and 19% of its GDP. It says structurally, Russia has historically maintained one of the lowest debt to GDP ratios globally. However, funding its war in Ukraine has triggered a significant shift how the debt is held. So this war in Ukraine was meant to put Russia more in debt, to put pressure on Russia. Okay, to put more economic pressure on Russia, man, because they really want regime change in Russia too, get Putin out of there. Okay, and these nations, let's go here. Said breakdowns of Russia's debt. All right, so when you go into it, let me see. It said total combined external debt is 308 billion. All right, sovereign external debt is 61 billion. All right, but then when you get down the current standing with IMF, it says Russia's relationship with the Internal Monetary Fund and the World Bank is currently highly restricted and strained, though it legally remains a member. Okay, so there's been some strains with the relationship with the IMF and Russia, but said Russia joined the IMF on June 1st, all right, 1992, and remains, all right, a member. Now, it says Russia does not currently owe money to the IMF under active loans. Its historical loan arrangements have been fully resolved. Okay? Russia does not currently owe money to the IMF under active loans. Its historical loan arrangements have been fully resolved, man. So Russia has a little more leeway. You see, America just finished. America just a complete. That's why the American government is just a complete goddamn puppet show. Okay, it's a complete joke. All right. Now I say the elites have sway in every government. Okay, but some more than others and some way more than others. You see, but remember, Russia has a part in prophecy to play. Damn what the elites talking about. Okay, their power only goes so far. Okay, and their power is only enough to get them to a certain point in prophecy to mandate this microchip. Okay, and then the Lord is going to allow this war to go haywire, man. Okay, so just dealing with Russia now. When you go here, and this if another brother also can put Isaiah 13, 17 through 19. Bob Kashah. Okay. You know, so I pray that this is making sense. I know it's a lot of information. I'm trying to keep it tight. But so when you go from there, all right. So you go into the IMF itself. Okay, now there are, let me see, trying to get straight to the point. So there are, okay, it says total membership. It said the IMF has 191 member, all right, has 191 member countries overall, and nearly half of its members have utilized or maintained some form of credit or borrowing arrangement with the institution in recent years. Okay, so you have 191 countries. Now I think it's only like 196 countries. Okay, so I asked, okay, what countries don't have IMF banking? All right, and here you go. And you see these now the news start to make a little more sense when you go into the banking. It says only 5 nation member states are completely outside the International Monetary Fund network, and right, and are not members. Cuba, you see, why did Cuba? So what we've been hearing lately with Cuba, man, breaking them down. North Korea has been completely on the outside, okay, of this banking system. Okay, but who does North Korea got deals with? China and Russia and Iran. Okay, and they able to operate outside. And China plays both sides because China is heavily invested into the global economy, but then it's also able to do deals with these nations on the outside of the economy. Okay, so they've been in the middle playing both sides. Okay, so that was interesting. So you only have 5 countries. Now, Iran is an IMF member, but see, it says, let me see, because I asked it, what is the IMF bank standing with Iran? It said Iran is a fully recognized member country of the International Monetary Fund, but it maintains 0 active loans or credit arrangement with the institutions. Okay, so what we're seeing is they need Iran to get integrated into this system, man, so they can get to the next phase. They tried it by force, it didn't work. So now we're seeing deals. Okay, now we're seeing deals where they're giving Iran concessions, man. Okay, it says Iran is a fully recognized member country of the International Monetary Fund, but it maintains 0 active loans or credit arrangement with the institution, man. They've been on the outside looking in. Okay, and now what you're seeing is, all right, the West is beginning to give concessions to get Iran, okay, integrated into this system, man. Okay, so they can get to the next phase. You see? So, yeah, just get into the information. But let's get a few precepts, you know. And like I got another video. I got 2 more videos I want to get into. All right, let's get some more precepts. All right, this is the brother Yashima tribe of Judah, Psalms 55:20 in the T says, as for my companion, he betrayed his friends. All right, he broke his promises, and this is the spirit of Esau. Okay, Esau, you know, he comes as if he's a companion or a friend, but he breaks all his treaties. He breaks all his promises. Now we use that to speak about what he did with Gad, but he does that with everyone, even himself, even amongst these oligarchs, the Edomite oligarchs, elite families. They break their treaties and promises, man. Okay, so no deal that they put together can ever stand because this nigga don't have no integrity, no honor. Okay, verse 21, it says his words are smooth as butter, but in his heart is war. So there war is in his heart. So these deals seem sweet and, you know, at the moment, but war is in his heart, man. He's still looking for an angle, you know, to go for it all, because Esau plays a zero-sum game. He's not about, you know, having mutual benefits and no agreement. Esau don't work like that. He want all the benefits with you with nothing. Okay? It says his words are as soothing as lotion, okay, but underneath are daggers, man. Okay? So you best believe while all this is going on, everybody is still making war preparation. And these nations know this. So Iran and Russia and China, they're not, you know, North Korea, they're making war preparation. And they continue to progress in this new world order. They make moves to advance this new world order, to roll this thing out. They still have war preparations in the background, man. Okay? And that's what the Lord is going to ignite. Okay? These war tensions that's there is not going to go anywhere. And it's going to overthrow this whole agenda, man. That's why we got Proverbs 26, okay, and 27. Okay, it says, whoso diggeth a pit shall fall therein, and he that rolls the stone, it will return upon him. So this devil, he's digging a pit, which is a trap, but he's going to fall into the trap because he's trying to set up a system of complete slavery, complete digital slavery, but he's going to end up in slavery. Okay, because when this war takes off, okay, and America is destroyed and nuked, okay, and these devils are in their bunkers or the space station, wherever they're hiding, they're going to get snatched up and go into captivity. See, the elites are used to waging wars that they don't have to participate in, okay, because they goddamn cowards, okay? But see, this war that they started, all right, the Lord is going to have this war, all right, and they're going to end up in captivity because of this war that they started. You see, they've got what they wanted from World War I and World War II. They're not going to get what they want from World War III. They're going to go into captivity. So this trap that they're setting for the world, all right, their stone is going to roll on them. Okay? And they're going to go into captivity. They're going to lose their power, their authority, their wealth. Okay? You see this whole, you're going to own nothing and be happy, that slogan? No. You Edomites are going to own nothing. You're going to be very unhappy, man. Okay? In captivity, all right, under Yahweh Shai and the elect. Okay? So, I'm going to play one more video. Well, I got 2 more, you know. Now, I hope this is making sense. And put a 1 on the comment board if this is all making sense, you know, because I know it's a lot of information. I don't want to just be talking your head off and not making any sense, you know. But if this is making sense, what's coming out. Put a 1 on the comment board. But I have another video. Now, this is the guy, Patrick Wood. He's big on technocracy. Okay, so he's watching what's happening on the back end, and he's seeing, all right, what they're doing with Iran, which is trying to pull them into this system so they can move forward. Okay, with technocracy, man. All right, so let's come the Wally, how about Shemal Shah? They're just making sense. But let's play this here. Let's play this.
Not containment. Joining me now is Patrick Wood. Look at this headline. Iran. The goal was always economic reintegration, not containment. I mentioned this article on radio today at 1 o'clock Central Radio TV with Aaron. I said, think about Gaddafi. Gaddafi kind of changed his behavior after Ronald Reagan, I think, put a missile down one of his tents or something. But Gaddafi was looking to switch over to gold and try to get a lot of the African nations to go along with gold and dump the dollar, world reserve currency, the petrodollar. Then Saddam Hussein was talking about that. Those two guys, neither one of them stayed around very long. Now you got Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Iran's joining in with BRICS. One has to wonder if this isn't about trying to get Iran on the same page with the New World Order. And maybe to become partners with them, with IMEC. And now we find out that Iran's got their own little deal they're building, very similar to IMEC or the Belt and Road Initiative or the Al-Fal port in Iraq. So maybe this is about economic reintegration, not containment. Let's ask about that with our guest, Patrick Wood. Patrick, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Tell me about this article and what do you think? I mean, Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, is this are they trying to get Iran to come to the table and behave and play along with the New World Order?
It may be a little bit more complicated than that, but that's a good possibility. They're not saying gold, but maybe black gold. I don't know. But the deal has been worked out like a conquering type of a deal. Mm-hmm. They don't expect at this point that Iran will surrender anything. And in fact, they've given them everything at this point. They've reversed field, and all the sanctions are going to be wiped out. This is the intention. That means all the money that has been held in their name for all these years, since 1979, by the way, will be given back to them. And this is in addition to the $300 billion private fund that's been being set up. And they say there's half that money is already in escrow somewhere. I don't know where, but they're saying this is a private fund that's being set up to develop Iran into a global power, if you will.
The sellout package. Okay. So, like the beast is putting together a sellout package, man. Okay. Because if they would have got like I say, the goal was regime change. Because if they did regime change, they wouldn't have to do none of this. All right. Because they have puppets in place that will be curating policies. Okay. That will give America, the West, America and the West, full control over Iran assets. But now they got to make a deal with the regime that's there. Okay. Ideally, if they wanted a whole new regime, it would have been far more easier. Okay, that's why you don't hear about Venezuela anymore, because they got a puppet down there, so they can do what they want. They can put every policy, she gonna forward every policy that benefits the IMF and the bankers, okay, and the corporation. You see what the Venezuelan people through. Okay, Asher to try it through. Okay, that's why they playing hardball with Cuba. You see, this is how these devils get down. Okay, but what happened? They hit this brick wall of prophecy. Okay, it's causing them to pivot. Okay, so let's play a little more.
And this is not what you do when you conquer somebody. This is almost reminiscent of China when it came into the world stage in 1976, when Henry Kissinger and Zbigniew Brzezinski brought Chairman Deng to the United States, wined him, dined him, taught him about technocracy. He went home and built a world-class superpower. So, there was a nation that was flat on its back, almost like Iran is now. And we see they were conquered not by a military, but by economic development. This is what's in play right now. When Jared Kushner went to Iran with Steve Witkoff, he wasn't even, and he had nothing to do with the government of the United States. This is absolutely incredible to me that a civilian piker, if you will, he's not a piker, but you get my point. This guy has no business being in the middle of this deal at all. He's just the president's son-in-law, and that's all. He has no salary, has no position, not even a cursory title. But nevertheless, he's been the main architect of this deal with Iran. And you can see his strategy, as I think is very clear when you consider the Abraham Accords that he built during the first administration. And you can see his strategy now is to offer them a carrot to be integrated into the global system. Now, maybe they'll go screaming and shouting. I don't know. But at this point, the door is open for this. And so people now are saying, well, Israel is being dissed, condemned by almost everybody in the world, it seems like at this point, including Vice President Vance. What's going on with that as well. But people's eyes are not on the ball. The bouncing ball, it speaks of economic reintegration. That's a phrase, by the way. That's a statecraft term. Basically, when you want to take a country that has been excluded from the world economy, the world system, and you want to reintegrate them into that system. This is what's going on right now.
Mm-hmm. And that's what it's looking like. We spoke on it, I don't know, yesterday, day before. I believe I may mention, but then the spirits had these things come out, this morning. So let's go from there, because this video here should tie it all together. All right. So let's go here, because ultimately, the elites are ready to roll this thing out, man. All right. So let's go. Let's go here. All right. So we're going to play a few minutes of this video. This is the last video I got. And it's going to tie everything up, what they want to do in general. Okay.
Wait, this is gold.
There's a lot you can do with image generation in Ace Browser.
And the people who stayed increasingly feel that the civilization has moved on without them, that the institution Something is wrong. You can feel it. Not bad news on TV wrong, but something deeper, like the whole machinery of society is still running, but it's making a sound it wasn't making before. And here's what the numbers actually show. In 2024, the world's most comprehensive democracy research organization found that global democracy has collapsed back to 1985 levels. Not in dictatorships, not in failing states. In Western Europe and North America, the oldest democracies on Earth are declining faster than almost anywhere else right now. That same year, the US Surgeon General, a government doctor, not a political commentator, declared loneliness a national epidemic. More than half of Americans in the most connected country in human history reported feeling measurably, clinically alone. If you've watched any election recently anywhere in the West, you already know the third thing. In poll after poll across the West, voters say they want change. But when asked what kind, the most common answer isn't a policy. It's a person, someone who looks angry enough, someone who promises to burn the whole thing down. And underneath all of it, in almost every Western country, the deepest political divide is no longer left versus right. It's the people who left versus the people who stayed. The cities against everywhere else. Two groups who no longer seem able to speak the same language or understand what the other one actually needs. 4 separate crises, all accelerating, all at the same time. A German philosopher predicted every single one of them. In 1918, before smartphones, before social media, before television, before anyone alive today was born. His name was Oswald Spengler, and he didn't just predict things would get bad. He described a precise, step-by-step sequence, a specific mechanism he said every great civilization follows before it collapses. When you hold that sequence against the world right now, it becomes very hard to look away. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a 108-year-old blueprint, and it appears to be running exactly on schedule. So who was this man, and why has almost nobody heard of him? Spengler was not famous. He was not connected to powerful people or prestigious institutions. He was a secondary school teacher in Munich, living alone, struggling with chronic migraines, barely making ends meet, quietly working on a project that the people around him thought was insane. His central idea was almost childlike in its simplicity, and that partly is why it hit so hard. He believed civilizations are not like machines. They're like living things, like trees. A tree grows through spring, summer, autumn. It flowers, it produces its fruit. And then winter comes and the tree dies. Not because anything attacked it, not because anything went wrong, because that is what living things do. The cycle runs, and you cannot negotiate with the cycle. He looked at every great civilization in human history. Ancient Egypt, classical Greece, the Roman Empire, medieval Islam, imperial China, and he saw the same arc in all of them. A vital, creative spring, a brilliant summer, a rich autumn, and then a winter. Technically advanced, materially wealthy, and spiritually hollow. An age where the forms of civilization are still intact, but the life inside them has quietly drained away. In 1918, the same year the First World War ended, the great European empires collapsed, and the world as people had known it simply ceased to exist. He published his findings under the title, The Decline of the West. It became an immediate sensation, not because people agreed with him, but because it felt, to people holding the ruins of their world in their hands like he had already read the newspaper they were holding. He made 4 specific predictions. We're going to go through all of them, and I want you to ask yourself honestly as we go, how many of these feel familiar? Here is a simple question. Think about the last major political debate you watched or scrolled past. Take a moment and actually try to remember a single policy argument that stayed with you, a real number, a specific plan, a genuine solution to a real problem. Now think about how much of it was performance, personality, theater. Who landed the best line? Who looked dominant? Who seemed like they were winning the room? You already know how that question ends. Spengler had a name for this. He called it Caesarism. And to understand what he meant, you need to understand what happened to Rome, not the part everyone knows, but the part that actually matters. The Roman Republic was one of the most sophisticated political systems in the ancient world. A senate, courts, laws, genuine checks on power, real debates between real competing ideas. For centuries, it worked. And then, slowly and almost invisibly, something happened. The Senate kept its chairs, the courts kept their procedures, elections kept happening. But the actual authority, the trust, the belief, the legitimacy slowly leaked out of all of it. Not through revolution, through exhaustion, through a public that had gradually stopped believing any of it actually worked for them. And into that vacuum, the strong man walked in. Julius Caesar didn't break the Roman Republic. He found one that had already broken itself from the inside. The forms were all still standing. The soul was gone. And he was simply bold enough to claim what the vacuum had made available. Augustus did the same. Then emperors who didn't bother with the pretense at all. Spengler said, "This always happens. When people stop believing in their institutions, the institutions don't disappear. They hollow out. And a certain kind of person, loud, confident, willing to tear up the old rules, fills the space. Now, look at the present. That democracy collapse isn't just a headline number. The V-Dem Institute's decade of tracking reveals something far more specific. It's a recognizable pattern. A rapid concentration of authority in single figures, the deliberate weakening of courts and oversight institutions, and a public so exhausted with the old system that it welcomes the concentration rather than resisting it. Spengler didn't just predict the decline, he predicted the exact shape of how it happens. Hungary is the most complete example. Viktor Orban didn't stage a coup. No tanks, no violence. He simply won elections, and then legally, through parliamentary majorities and constitutional amendments, packed courts, rewrote media ownership laws, redesigned the electoral system. Today, Hungary is classified by independent researchers as a competitive authoritarian state. It still holds elections. They just don't really determine anything anymore. The Senate of Rome still has its chairs. The building is beautiful. The ceremonies continue. What happens inside no longer matters. But here is what Spengler insists you understand, and this is the part that changes how you see everything that follows. This is not a story about Viktor Orban, or about any specific political figure anywhere. The individual is almost beside the point. The vacuum creates the Caesar, not the other way around. And what fills that vacuum? That is exactly what the next prediction answers. And it hits closer to home than most people are comfortable admitting.
Tired of manually generating?
Let me ask you something personal before we go any further. When was the last time you made something, or joined something, or contributed to something that you knew would still matter after you were gone? Not a career achievement. Not a moment of individual success. Something genuinely larger than you. Something that belonged to more people than just you. If that question feels strange or distant, Spengler says that feeling is the whole story. He drew a line between two things that most people treat as the same: culture and civilization. In his framework, these are not just different words, they are opposites. Culture is alive. It's what a civilization produces when it genuinely believes in something, when its art, music, architecture, and stories grow from a shared set of values that people actually hold. Culture isn't a product to consume, it's something you participate in. You don't watch a cathedral, you enter it. You're part of it. It was built by people who would die before it was finished, for people who hadn't been born yet, and it belongs to all of them together. That's culture. It grows from something real, and it points towards something larger than any individual. Late civilization is what's left when that's gone. The concerts still happen. The films still get made. The art galleries are open, but they're products now, not expressions. And the content that rises to the top isn't the deepest. It's the most stimulating, the most optimized for keeping your attention from drifting. TikTok doesn't ask what you find meaningful. It measures what stops your thumb and gives you more of it. That single sentence describes the entire architecture of modern entertainment, and it has no mechanism, not one, for caring whether you feel better or worse when you put the phone down. That loneliness epidemic is not just a public health crisis. It is a civilizational signal. The most connected generation in human history is the loneliest on record, not despite the connection, but in some measurable way because of it. Multiple controlled studies have confirmed what most people already sense. The more time you spend on social media, the lonelier you tend to feel. Not marginally, significantly. And experiments show that even modest reductions in social media use produce measurable reductions in loneliness within weeks. Spengler would have pointed to one thing. Connection requires shared meaning, not just shared content. You can watch the same video as 2 billion other people and feel completely, utterly isolated. Because what you need is not stimulation. What you actually need is to belong to something real, something that was there before you and will be there after you. And here is the part that nobody in the attention economy wants you to understand. The algorithm was designed to maximize your time on the platform. That is its only actual goal. Your sense of meaning, your sense of belonging, your feeling that your life connects to something larger. These things are simply irrelevant to that goal. If keeping you a little lonely keeps you scrolling, the machine has no reason to object. You are not broken for feeling empty in the middle of all this content. You are responding correctly to something that was designed to hold your attention, not to nourish your life. Alexis de Tocqueville in 1840, he warned that the quiet end of free civilization wouldn't arrive through violence. It would arrive through comfort, a soft, all-encompassing power that keeps people in what he called perpetual childhood. Entertained, provided for, and slowly relieved of the burden of thinking or building anything for themselves. He called it soft despotism. He thought it was the democratic world's deepest vulnerability. He wrote that 80 years before Spengler. Neither of them had seen a smartphone. Both of them were describing one. This is what the collapse looks like at the individual level, inside each person, quietly, behind the screen. But Spengler also predicted what this hollowing out looks like when you zoom out across entire cities, entire regions, entire classes of people. And that prediction explains the political divide that nobody in power seems able to close.
And yeah, he goes on, to just explain the downfall. He's gonna go into politics, and ultimately, all right, this lack of a stable government, because they're intentionally sabotaging these governments to get people to crave for stability, and that's the play for order out of chaos. Okay, so while they're doing that psychologically to the people, they're getting all these nations on board fully economically. Okay, because the damage has already been done to the masses to where they're already ready for a new world order. Okay, because they're so worn out with the old world. Okay, so while they're doing this psychologically to the people, all right, they're tying up the loose ends economically with certain nations, with Iran being the main one. Okay, and then once they have that, they're gonna close the trap. Okay, and hit the switch. So let's go here. Like I said, you can watch the rest of the video. I'll put it in the comment. Well, let's watch this. So this devil, these elites, they're fully locked in to trying to pull this off, man, which we know it's gonna be a failure. Okay, because another thing with the psychology of the people, he has gotten people to be completely anti-Messiah. Okay, self-worship. Okay, he's removed people from any feeling of belonging. Okay, because people are longing for something to belong to. So he's going to come with a whole global community. Like, look, you can belong to a whole global community now with this technology. Okay, you put this in, you belong to a global community. Okay, so the trap is laid. Okay, and like I say, he's tying up ends economically, and he's going to close this thing up, man. At the same time, you still have the hard infrastructure being built, the data centers, the flock cameras, okay, that are going up. Okay, so this devil, he's pushing to the point to switch this thing over. This is Job 21:14. It said, therefore they say unto the Most High, depart from us, for we desire not the knowledge of thy ways. What is the Almighty that we should serve him, and what profit should we have if we pray unto him? So this whole New World Order is him, okay, replacing the Most High with technology. And this is him telling people, like, look, we can bless you, okay? You don't have to serve this God of the Bible, okay? We can bless you. You see, we can enhance your life, okay? We can enhance your experience in the earth, okay? You can prosper through us and our technology, okay? And this is how this devil, okay, is marketing this New World Order. It said, verse 16, lo, their good is not in their hand, the counsel of the wicked is far from me. How oft is the counsel of the wicked put out? So these devils are having these counsels that are far from the Heavenly Father, okay? And they want to completely separate, all right, the world, okay, society from the Heavenly Father, okay, and claim, okay, existence for themselves, man. This man wants to hijack, okay, all creation with technology, man, okay, and rule it through a technocracy. That's this man's counsel, okay? It says, how often is the counsel of the wicked put out? But how often? Because he went through those different empires, okay? They go through those seasons, and right now America's in their winter, to where it has, you know, it's peaking out technologically wise, but it's empty, okay, when it comes to morale, integrity, honor, reverence to a high power. It's empty. It's hollowed out, okay? So America's in their winter phase, and they're just going to go ahead and die off, man. And see, the birth of our kingdom is going to be an everlasting kingdom, okay? That'll never die off. It said, how often is the counsel of the wicked put out? How oft cometh their destruction upon them? The Most High distributed sorrows in his anger. Yeah, so the Most High is finna bring sorrow to this whole system, man. Okay, verse 18, it said, they are as stubble before the wind. Yeah, those nukes. Okay, and the chaff that the storm carried away, nuclear destruction in the chariots, man. Because this is what it all leads to, man. You know, everything that we went through, you know, we can go into the details and this and that. But to sum everything up, okay, Esau is being brought to the king of terrors, man. His ass is going to be judged, removed from power, and the Lord is going to establish a righteous rulership in the earth, you know, through Yahweh Shai. Okay. So, yeah, I'll leave it there, you know. So, Lord will, all right, you brothers, all right, and you few sisters edified once again. I want to give all praise and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Makakadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers. And peace and blessing, salutations to the whole flesh. Shalom.